Today we're going to study another type of conditional sentence called the third conditional, which belongs to the group of unreal conditionals. Unlike real conditionals, which describe possible or real situations, unreal conditionals describe imaginary situations, things that did not really happen. The third conditional is especially useful when we talk about the past. We use it to imagine a different past situation and a different result. In other words, we imagine how the past could have been different. This structure is very common when we express regret, criticism, explanations, or hypothetical situations. Let's start with the structure. The third conditional uses if plus past perfect in one clause, and would have, could have, or might have plus past participle in the other clause. For example, if I had studied harder, I would have passed the exam. Here, the reality is that I did not study hard, and as a consequence, I failed the exam. Remember that conditional sentences have two clauses, and the order can change. We can say, if I had studied harder, I would have passed the exam, or I would have passed the exam if I had studied harder. Both are correct. However, when the sentence begins with the if clause, we normally use a comma after it. Now let's think about the meaning more carefully. The third conditional always refers to a situation that did not happen in the past. We imagine the possible result of that unreal situation. For example, if they had left earlier, they wouldn't have missed the train. In reality, they left late and they missed the train. We often use the third conditional to express regret. For example, if I had known about the problem, I would have helped you. This means I didn't know, and now I regret it. Another example could be, if she had studied medicine, she might have become a doctor. This suggests a different life path that never happened. We can also use this structure for criticism. For example, if the company had acted more responsibly, the accident could have been avoided. This criticizes the company's actions in the past, or if they had driven less dangerously, nobody would have been injured. Here, the speaker is clearly criticizing someone's behavior. Notice that we can use different modal verbs in the result clause. Would have usually describes the most probable result. Could have expresses possibility or ability. Might have expresses a weaker possibility. For example, if I had trained more, I could have won the competition, or if we had arrived earlier, we might have seen the concert. Let's also look at negative forms. For example, if I hadn't moved to another city, I wouldn't have met my partner. Or, I wouldn't have accepted the job if I had known how stressful it was. These examples show imaginary situations connected to the past. Questions are also possible in the third conditional. For example, what would you have done if you had lost your passport? Or, if you had known the truth, would you have reacted differently? These questions invite people to imagine an alternative past situation. Now let's connect this grammar with some adverbs of manner, which help us describe how actions happen. For example, if he had driven more carefully, the accident wouldn't have happened. Or, if she had spoken more politely, the conversation would have ended differently. We can also say, luckily nobody was hurt, or obviously they hadn't planned the project correctly. These adverbs make our sentences richer and more natural. Another important point is pronunciation and contractions. In spoken English, native speakers often contract these forms. For example, if I'd known instead of if I had known, or I would have helped instead of I would have helped. At B1 level, it's important that you recognize these contractions when listening. So, to finish, remember this key idea. The third conditional talks about unreal or imaginary situations in the past. The structure is if plus past perfect, and would, could, might have plus past participle. We use it to express regret, criticism, explanations, and hypothetical results. The past cannot change, but English allows us to imagine how things could have been different.